What is the function of art? And you've heard me talk about this before. Why do you do it? You know, what is your function? These are not questions that I readily answered because people don't seem to be interested in that. But I think without that, you know, I don't think you know what you're doing. And I say, what is Chicano? And what is Chicano culture today? And there you'll find your answers. And I know it seems simple, but it is. It's very directly that. Yeah. And then you can spend, you know, days, you can have a whole class, a whole semester class, and that's what I'd like to see. Like I say, you know, when I first started, there was no such thing as Chicano art. People said, what? Chicano art? I never heard of that. That's what I hear over and over again. I say, I know, we're inventing it. You can't do that. One guy wrote an article, said that I was all creating mythologies, or he was saying that I was just, I couldn't do Chicano art because Chicano art was, Chicanos weren't a culture, and that cultures, no, he was a Chicano, but he was from Mexico. But he said that we weren't a culture. And I said, well, what are we? He said, we're nothing. Of course, I was being a Buddhist at that time, and I said, yeah, you're right. But he was wrong in saying that cultures take many, many years to develop. Especially today, we must recognize that cultures change monthly. You know, culture is not a static thing, except in people's minds. So, anyway, he put me down about, you know, I didn't understand these things and all that. And what I was really doing was coming up with new vocabulary. I was really trying to bring a vocabulary of what is art in Chicano culture. So I came up with the altars, the lowriders, and all the, you know, you've heard me give that little kind of criteria to find what Chicano art is. But never would I ever say what it is specifically, is because there's so many of us and we do so many different things. So. Chicano art, for one, has become very complex. We have guys that are being trained in a number of Eurocentric oriented schools, but as monocultural products. In other words, they consider Chicano art as being not only ethnic, but not a real way to make, not a real motive to make art.
What, do you think that changed from when you went to school?
Oh, it's changed. Yes, it has. Really? It was absent. When I first started asking about Chicano art, it didn't exist at all. My teacher said, well, what is that? And I said, I really don't know. I said, but we're Chicanos and we have a culture, therefore we must have an art. So as a student, I went and I found out, yes, we do. But it was at such a low-level folk art, amateurish level when I first recognized gardens, lowriders, calligraphy, all kinds of stuff that I found in the barrio, tortilla calendars. That was an effort to bring art into your kitchen. The way we decorated kitchens, the way things were done with altars and the doilies on the furniture, those are aesthetic efforts. See, they're not recognized as being very important, but I see and I've recognized cultures that do huge shows on quilts, you know. He said, well, what's the same? Well, there's a quilt culture out there that they recognize. There's a doily culture in the Chicano communities, and that's never even been recognized as a value. And there's a lot of women that do that, and I know men that crochet. It isn't just women. But I think the emphasis of its importance is undervalued, and yet a lot of people do it. It's like lowriders. We got a huge industry in lowriders, but when you go to college campuses, well, that's changed too. I remember when I first was an undergraduate student, I had a lowrider, well, let me fast forward. When I was a teacher of Chicano studies, I had a 54 Chevy Tangerine Orange with a little steering wheel and all that stuff. And I parked it in the staff parking lot, and this guy was going to give me a ticket because I was taking stuff to my office, right? And when I came back, there was this kid, he was going to write me a ticket. And I said, hey, I said, what you giving me a ticket? He goes, is this your car? And but he saw me as a student. You know, I had black hair then. I was, you know, thin and all that. But the point is that I said, hey, I said, this is a faculty parking sticker, and this is my car, and I'm on faculty here. And I says, did you look at this for the sticker in the front? He assumed that it was a lowrider. There ain't no way going to be a teacher in that campus.
Yeah.
Now this is 75, no, 77, about 77.
So that was really in the heart of lowrider.
Well, it depends on how old you are.
I used to have a lowrider myself.
Yeah, but not in 1955.
Oh, not in 1955. My dad did. My dad.
See, that brings up another point. What we have is a very complex thing. We have people that are all at different ages. They have different Chicano orientation. Some people ate more menudo and listened to more rancheros. Other people went into hip-hop and joined black culture and all the current stuff with the hip-hop. And they're still Chicanos. You see, what people have to realize is that the experience and the spirit of that experience is incredibly complex and very diverse.
Yeah.
And we've said this 100 times. When I first got started in '64, I did my first Chicano art show, and I thought it was a joke. I never realized that it was going to take over my life, and I was going to become an artist, focusing on using culture as an artistic motive. I wanted to be an ethnic artist. I wanted to talk about Chicano culture. And people told me, and one guy told me it was a loser's club. Why would you go there? Nobody likes that stuff. They don't even like the word and so forth. And I said, well, I don't care. This is what I am. I'm going to manifest. I'm going to be what I am. And that's what they told me to do in school. Be yourself, you know, extract from your experience and let that be the source for your art. An offhanded kind of remark about humor, you know, that humor has no place in serious art. And I was standing there, I wanted to jump up and down and said, hey, are you kidding me? But I kept quiet, and now I'm ready to explode to tell them, yes, it is important. Because if art is supposed to connect with people's emotions, humor is a very good way to do it, I think, you know. So I don't think it's a frivolous motive at all. And I've heard people say it's more difficult. For me, I just find it more interesting for myself, you know, to try to be funny. Whether you are or not, I don't care. You keep throwing out the material, and